Hey everyone, I'm here today with the game Ragusa, which I want to talk about. It is a game about a historical city on the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea, but it's also just a worker placement game, except your workers are houses, and your houses either go in the rural part of the city or in the city itself. We're going to take a look at how to play the game, and then we'll come back and I'll tell you why I like it. So here we are ready to start playing Ragusa. Well, kind of. Let's talk about this game board, and then we'll look at individual player setup. But first of all, we have rural hexes and city hexes. We have a market for our wine, oil, and silver commodities. We have our score track that goes around here. Each of the players can put one of their score markers here that are double-sided. They have 100 on this side and nothing on the other side on the 0. And we have ship cards here. These track the initial cost of commodities. We have 1, 2, 3 of them that are for oil, so we're going to take those and we're going to move those up a total of 4 because of those green arrows. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 for oil will go up here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Silver is going to go up 1, and wine is going to go up 1 also. Our market's already set. You see these ship cards are going to be used and scored throughout the game for their bonus points as people buy them. They have a cost down here of whatever, like this is oil, this is wine, this is silver, and then the same commodity goes down in the market. So if I used oil to pay for this, then oil is going to be worth less in the market because there's going to be more of it flooding the market. But that's how that works. We'll come back to the board in a minute because there's some important reminders here about what houses cost as far as resources and the fish exchange, as well as how we get all these resources out here and how all of the city spaces work. But first, let's take a look at individual player setup. Here's an individual player board. We have these 3 markers on the commodities of wine, oil, and silver. They just start on top of their respective places. Commodities, when you earn them throughout the game, get spent. In contrast, we have resources which are tracked on these cards like this, and then they are turned. They're not really spent unless, of course, you go to the fish exchange, and we'll talk more about that. But this just keeps track of how many you have. So you can have different numbers of grapes, olives, fish. Probably want a lot of fish, maybe. Who knows? But it is Ragusa. And timber or wood. We have ore here, which is a good one to have. And stone. These are all going to depend on your house placement. Every player either gets 12, 10, or 9, depending on number of players. And that's when the game will end, is when you run out of these houses. In addition, all players always get all of their towers. The players will each get 3 bonus cards that look like this on the back. Let's take a look at them and decide which one to keep. They're all very similar in that the most points that you can get from any one of them is 12 points. This one would just give you 4 points for each ore resource, which in this case, this person would be getting 8 points at the end of the game if they have that. If they get this up to 3 ore resources available to them, then they're going to max that out at 12 points. This one is for spices that they have on ship cards. So if they get 6 different spices, they're going to get 12 points out of that one. This one is for, I guess, like upholsteries or linens or something like that. Silks maybe. But if they have those, for each one of those, they get 3, again, for a max of 12 points. So they're all very similar in that respect. After taking a look at those bonus cards, they're just going to keep one and return the rest to the discard for the bonus cards. Remember, these aren't actually connected. That's just an example of how they might be connected after you get houses up on the board. Let's talk about gameplay. Every turn, players are going to take one of those houses and place it out on the board. You have to have the right number of resources available to you. For rural hexes, you have to have 1 wood. For urban hexes, you have to have 1 stone. For hexes like this that are on both a rural and an urban setting, you're going to have 1 wood and 1 stone available. So here, this hex means 1 house needs 1 wood available, this one needs 1 stone, and this one needs 1 stone. I couldn't build this yet because I don't have access to the materials. How do I get access? I simply place a house down next to it. In this case, I would have access to 2 wood, and 1 grapes. Remember, I don't really spend those, it's just how much I have access to throughout the game. So the rural hexes are going to give me access to wood. Notice the 2 stone, the single ore spot here, and grapes and olives. We also have these sea hexes, which are going to give access to fish, which are also available in the city. In the city, we have a number of different places that are going to convert our resources into commodities. Let's take a look at those places first. That's the winery, the silversmith, and the oil press. All 3 of these locations operate similarly. If I place a house down here, and notice these are crosses, we'll talk about that more in a second with the architect, but if I place a house down here, I can turn every grape resource that I have access to, times the number of houses I have around this hex, into wine. So going back to this board, let's say I had something like this, where I already have 2 wood, and I have 2 grape, and maybe I have 2 fish, and a single stone. Otherwise I couldn't place in the city. With these resources available, I placed a house down into the winery. Then, since it's my first house, I take 1 times 2 and add that to what I already have. Maybe I had 0, now I have 2. The next time I placed a house down into the winery, I would have 2 houses times 2 grapes for a total of 4 to make my total wine 6. Remember, these commodities are spent, resources are never spent. In the same way that the winery adds to my wine commodity, the silversmith adds to my refined silver commodity from ore. The oil press changes olives into oil. Each of these 3 also activates any other houses that are there. So even if I go there, if another player plays there, after me, on their turn, they will activate it, number of grapes times number of houses, and then I get to activate, let's say I looked like this, blue player placed down, they get their grapes times houses, now I get my 2 grapes times my 2 houses, even though it's not my turn. That's this rotating green symbol here, just to show we go around in turn order. This symbol shows up on the 3 resource to commodity spaces, but it also shows up on the architect, mason, wharf, and market spaces. Let's go ahead and talk about those spaces. At the architect space, whenever I go there, I'm going to get a tower. What do towers do? Well, at the end of the game, you're going to want to have as many walls connected as you can. As long as there's not another player's piece in between the wall spaces, you can count from your houses to get points. This would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points at the end of the game because there are no other colors in between. But what if blue had placed here? That interrupts my chain in the wall. When I go to the architect, I can place 1 tower down anywhere on the cross spaces. It simply goes over the house that's there, if there is a house, or a house can go underneath later on. Once this is down, it continues my wall. In this way, I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points, and I am not interrupted by the blue house. By the way, how do I get these walls out? By going to the mason. When I go to the mason, I get to place a wall piece out. Then every other player in clockwise order who has a house here also gets to place a wall piece out. We're going to come back to the Rector's Palace and the Cathedral because these are both end-game scoring. They don't have the same revolving symbol here. Instead, they have a red symbol. But let's go down to the Wharf. At the Wharf, I can choose any one commodity to trade in for its current market price. Let's say silver is currently trading for 4. I can sell one of my silvers from my personal board, like this, and gain that many victory points. After I'm finished with my turn, each other player who has a house here may also take this action. This goes in clockwise order, resolving for each house that is on the hex. The next space is the Fishmonger. At the Fishmonger, we're going to be selling fish for points. For every 2 fish I can sell, I can get a point. I can still use the fish exchange, which we haven't talked about, but I have to have these points after doing any fish exchange in order to get the scoring points. Next is the market. At the market, I can trade any commodities I might have, like oil, wine, and silver, to immediately gain these ships. When I do that, I will gain the points shown on the card. Don't forget, if there is a green plus sign down here with another commodity, you must also spend that in addition to the printed cost on the board. Once I've paid these costs, like I said, you get these immediate points. The card becomes yours so that you can get those bonus points at the end of the game. After buying the card, there will be an empty space. Slide all cards to the left to refill the row, then get a new ship card. Remember how we made our market prices fluctuate for commodities in the beginning? Same is going to happen now. In this case, we're going to make wine go up 2 spaces. Then we flip the ship card as usual to refill the market row. Just like there's a reminder for the houses, there's also a reminder for the fish exchange over here. Remember how I said resources are not normally spent? This is the one exception to that. At any time on any player's turn, you may use 2 of your fish to permanently increase either wood, olives, or grapes by 1. This reduces your fish by 2 permanently and raises the other single resource 1 time permanently. In the same way, you can spend 3 fish for a single stone and 4 fish for a single ore. This might be the best way to raise your ore at times. The final 2 spaces that we haven't talked about are going to the Rector's Palace and the Cathedral. There's no special requirement for either of these, but when you go to the Rector's Palace, 1 time you'll draw the top 2 bonus cards, choose 1 to keep and discard the other one. The Cathedral gives end-game points for sets of wine, oil, and silver. You will look at how many complete sets you have. Let's take a look at my player board here. Here I have 1, 2 complete sets because I have only 2 oil. So I take 2 oil plus the current market rates, which are 2, 3, and 4, for a total of 9. 2 sets times the current market rate. So in this case, that would be 2 times 9. 2 times 9 is 18. In order to do this, I would need to have at least 2 houses on the Cathedral. If I wanted to score for a 3rd time, because maybe I had been able to get that last set, so now I have 3 sets. If I actually wanted to score a 3rd set, I'd have to have 3 houses. So I'd take 3 times the 2 plus 3 plus 4, which again is 9, so 3 times 9 is 27 points. It's a pretty powerful spot, but I have to remember to do all the things, including having enough houses and enough sets of my commodities in order to score off of this space. That's mostly how you play the game, but let's go over how we score at the end. First of all, count up all your wall spaces with any tokens that you also have, uninterrupted by other players' colors. In this case, like I showed earlier, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because even though there's a blue house here, I was able to place my tower. These empty spaces don't matter because I can move from one house to another, counting all of my color and wall spaces. Count your wall spaces, score the Cathedral, and then score any bonus cards you might have. I'll show you an example of scoring your bonus cards, just so you understand how that works. Let's say it's the end of the game and I'm holding on to these 2 bonus cards. This one says 3 points for each roll of upholstery that I have for a max of 12 points. This one says 4 points for each ore I have access to. Going back to my example earlier, if I had 3 ore, then I had maxed out this one for a total of 12 points. And for this one, I would have already gotten my points for all 3 of these ship cards. Pretty good at 12 points. let's just include that for fun. And we'll include our wall and tower for fun too. I take a look and I have 1, 2, 3 of these fabric materials on these ships. And that's what I needed for this card. I didn't max it out at 12, but I did get 9 points out of it, which would take me up to 71 points. Not a bad score. And that's the basics of how you play Ragusa. Don't forget that the fish exchange action is a permanent action to alter these numbers and your fish number. You can't just keep doing this over and over again. Also, when you look at how many resources you need to build, like in the city here, this hex would need 3 stone available in order to put all 3 of these houses around the cathedral. So that's the basics of how to play Ragusa. I hope that helped you a little bit. Hopefully you don't forget anything. It's really a pretty easy game once you get going. It's just thinking about how you're going to use those resources to turn them into commodities and make stuff that you want to get more stuff, to get the right timing, to make those walls and have all those points. And it's nice to see the points in the walls and the points in your bonus cards and the points from getting ships out there and doing all that fun stuff. I really like the interaction. I like kind of the thinkiness of it that kind of emerges as the city grows. I like how the hexes have this nice interplay, and you can get a lot quickly that then you have to think about what you want to do with it. It's not too heavy of a game. I'd say it's really a medium weight, but because the icons are kind of small, especially those little green icons that remind everybody to do everything around the hexes and some of the other little tiny icons, I think that might be one of the biggest hurdles with this game, as well as the fact that some of the icons are the same color and it's hard for some people to see in certain settings, especially if you're around a bigger table. My ideal player count for Ragusa is 3 players, maybe 4. I think 5 gets a little bit much and there's too much going around the table, especially on the first time, for people to really understand. I think after a few repeated plays, people might like it better at 4 or 5, but only if everyone knows what they're doing and they don't have to look at the icons or be reminded of things very often. Well, I hope you enjoyed Ragusa. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I look forward to hearing from you about the game. It's a great game by Fabio Lopiano, published here in the US by Capstone Games, originally from Brain Crack Games. Thanks for watching, happy gaming, and I'll catch you later.